Hello everyone. This isn't going to be a tutorial. I'm not really going to be showing you how to make something, but I'm going to be showing you how I constructed a game manager, which is something a lot of people ask about. They don't know exactly what they're asking for, but what they're looking for is something called a game manager, and I'm just going to explain um, basically what it does and why to use one and how to use one, or how I organized mine at least for this game. I am not nearly done with this game, so it's probably going to change and be updated, and I'll add stuff to it and maybe even delete stuff from it. So it's a dynamic system, but you can change it as needed. I'm sure yours wouldn't be exactly the same as mine anyway. But hopefully it'll be helpful to some people because I see a lot of people asking some questions, especially in the game creator Discord, on things like how do you make sure that the gameplay is the same in every scene, or how just making sure how everything functions the same between different scenes. And the obvious answer to that would be that you would create a system, like a trigger system with your controls, and then the conditions for doing conditions and actions for setting up those controls. Make a prefab out of that, and then drag it into every scene. Um, What's a lot easier to do though is to create something called a game manager, which is basically just going to be, at least for me, it's a folder that holds a bunch of other managers. I have a lot of different aspects to my game, so I'm just gonna expand this here and show you guys. I have a bunch of different managers for everything, and these are all held within one game manager object. And there are some sub prefabs in here, nested prefabs I think is what they're called, for characters and stuff. But in general, these are all, let me close all these so it doesn't look as intimidating. In general, these are all their own managers, and they all do something. They all control some aspect of my game and then keep track of it for me. So that's basically what a game manager is it's going to be keeping track of stuff that's running in the background, just to make sure that everything is running the same. And you can just drag this whole game manager. Like I said, this is a prefab, so I can just drag this whole game manager into a new scene and everything's going to be automatically working because all of this is within the same prefab. Um, I will also mention, before I actually go through some of this, I'm using a tool called Hierarchy 2, which is a free app on the asset store that you can get for Unity, and it's really nice for organization. It does these separators and stuff, and you can create folders and change icons of stuff. I just really love the way that it's changed my organization, because I really, the original hierarchy system for Unity just kind of sucks, and Hierarchy 2 just makes it a lot prettier and easier to find stuff and deal with everything. So just point that out, that I'm using that. And I'm also going to point out that I'm using the state machine module for a lot of these systems that I've built. You don't have to use this, you can just use regular Game Creator. I just prefer to use State Machine because it's cleaner. And then for certain things, not so much for the game managers themselves, because the game managers are just going to be one instance of everything in each scene, but you can actually reuse stuff that you make in the state machine for other things. I'll go over that in another video, because there are some things that I use state machine for that are reusable, but this one isn't going to cover that. I'm also not going to go into a major amount of detail with like what specifically some of these do. I'm going to make different videos for each of these, because like my journal system is really in depth. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. There's actually going to be even more stuff here in the future because I'm not done building it out yet. So I'm not going to go into like a super amount of detail with every little thing here, but I'm just going to go over the basics of like what each of these does and why I have them in my game manager. And like I said, hopefully it'll be helpful to some people that aren't exactly sure how to set up like the back end stuff for their game. Just making sure, for example, here I have the uh, the cutscene manager, which is basically when there's a cutscene running, that manager is going to tell the game what the player can and can't do. And what the player can and can't do is say pause the game during a cutscene, or open the journal during a cutscene, or move during a cutscene and stuff like that. So that's all the managers are doing is you're using bools, and I'll show this in a second, to check stuff, and it's going to run actions, or it's going to compare conditions and run actions depending on what's going on. So that's all a game manager does. It's not any different than creating, like I said, you'd have, under normal circumstances, you'd probably have a whole bunch of stuff, just random game creator triggers here that would have uh, a condition or an action set for on key down, and you'd make your whole character or your player controls this way. For me, I just have a state machine, which is this guy right here, under my character managers and player controls. So like all of my player controls are kind of hidden within this part of my game manager, which is just so much easier to build and comprehend and look at, honestly, both being in state machine and being just within my game manager itself. It's clean. You can collapse everything, and then you can just drag the whole thing into a new scene and everything works. So I'm gonna start going over these and what each one of them does in a basic sense. Like I said, this cutscene manager is running on a variable change. So the trigger is on variable change, and the variable here is actually a bool within the state machine. Again, you don't have to have state machine to do these. I just use them because it's nicer. So for example, when you would, during the beginning of the game, there's an opening cutscene, and there's an action at the very start of that cutscene that triggers. You can actually drag this cutscene manager into a local variable and then make sure that that bool is set to true. And I think, do I have a cutscene here? I may have a cutscene here that I can actually show that. Cutscene number 1. Where are my actions? Here we go. So assign. Oh, see, I didn't actually assign it here. So at the beginning of this, you can drag this whole cutscene manager in here, and then make sure that the cutscene playing is on. So then when that variable changes, it's going to trigger this, and this is going to go to this is checking whether or not the bool is true or false. So since it's true, it's going to go this way and run these actions, and it's going to make sure that the journal manager, the inventory manager, the pause manager is all inactive, so you can no longer interact with them. The player isn't controllable, and you can no longer orbit the camera. And these 3 things here are all local variables where you drag the manager themselves into these local variables so it can access them. And because these are all stored within the same prefab, you don't actually have to do that every time. It'll actually save these connections. So it's just a really, really easy way to make sure that the player can't do things during certain sequences. And these all basically function the same. The dialogue manager is basically the same thing. On enter dialogue, you can't open the journal, you can't open your inventory, you can't pause it, and you cannot play as the character at that moment. And then when it turns off, and this is just triggered during dialogue sequences. So like this meet Shane dialogue over here runs an action that assigns bool to, and we'll drag this dialogue manager in here and click dialogue playing is true. And then at the end of that dialogue, we can do the same thing and make sure that that bool is false. So that's it. It's just really simple, and it's just running checks in the background to make sure you can and can't do stuff during certain times. And all of these, you can see all of these have similar little connections here. The inventory is connected to the pause and the journal manager. So they're all kind of communicating with each other and saying, hey, when I'm running, you can't do this stuff. Pretty simple. The state machine makes it even more simple. You can just, there's not even any like triggers or actions in here. You just drag the state machine in and it runs. Really, really easy stuff. There's a little bit of, like I said, I'm gonna make separate videos for this, but you can get pretty detailed with some of these. My journal manager is really in depth. There's a lot of stuff going on here. That will probably be a very long video that I'll make in the future. My player controls, like I mentioned before, are all contained within one little state machine here, and this isn't even actually done. I'm gonna have to add more stuff, but I have everything from walking and running, using a perception skill, sneaking, looking around and aiming, swapping characters because I have multiple playable characters in my game. Spam checker is a little bit hard to explain, but I can show that a little later. And this has bools. This doesn't connect to anything really outside of itself. The Blackboard just has things for like the is running, is sneaking, just effects within this manager. It's not connected to anything else because Game Creator already has the is controllable system, so you don't have to worry about like turning off the player controls, setting them inactive or anything. So that isn't necessary. I have a character manager down here that basically just assigns variables to, like for this one, it's assigning my current player is which character and assigning their icon, their avatars to the correct areas, and then assigning their game objects to global variables because game object variables do not save, so you need to have something to tell the game which character prefab is which, and then checking which player is the actual player, which character the player is playing as. And again, that one isn't really connected to anything. It is connected to the characters, but it's not connected to any of the other managers here. And I will explain what this global storage thing is. I have a stat manager here that I'm also going to make a separate video for, but Game Creator's stat system is actually pretty good. It kind of sets and stores stats by itself. But there was a specific way that I wanted to do the stats in my game, so I had to set up something kind of in between using state machine and regular GC. I'm not going to get into that here, but I will make a video for it soon, and that just it's basically controlling all of the stat leveling up and back end stat stuff like that Game Creator won't do on its own. At least I couldn't find a way to make it do it on its own. I think there is actually a way, but I'm not going to get into stats here because it's a really complex system. And I'll go over what this global storage thing is because these are basically all items that interact directly with these game managers. These are all in-game things that are directly connected to the managers in some way or another. For example, I actually have all my character prefabs stored in this game manager under global storage and then characters. And that is because this character manager has these character prefabs stored in here. So it knows which character is which, and it's going to assign them every time to those variables. And then I also have zoom in and zoom out camera actions. So whenever you enter a building in my game, I'll show the, let's see, motel lobby, this enter trigger here, this box, this enter trigger, every time you go in here, the camera is going to zoom in, and then when you leave, the camera zooms out. And I have these on tag enter and on tag exits. And what you can do, instead of just copying and pasting or duplicating or whatever, making new actions, you can just have them in this global storage, and when you want to use them, you just take them from your game manager, drag them in here, and you're good to go. And the I have a basic on-scene start here that's just going to be like things that happen at the beginning of every scene. Like for example, right now, it just has, I know that I want it to fade in on every scene. And since the game manager is going to be in every scene, this is going to go off every scene. And then if you want to have a separate one, which I do, I'm not running it right now, it's set inactive, but you can have a separate on-scene start that will do stuff just for this specific scene, like if you have like a maybe a location checker or something like that. I also have my cutscene black bars stored in here because I use that for every cutscene, so when these are, I can show these, the canvas settings, when these are visible, it makes it like a cinematic. So those are stored in there, and those can go along with the cutscene manager here. That's about it. Like I said, this is probably gonna change and grow, and maybe I can delete some of this stuff. I do have some unused things here that I'm just expecting to use in the future for storage. Character memories is one of those. I haven't built out that detailed part of the game yet, but I'm expecting that I'm going to need a manager for it in the future, so it's there. Combat manager I might need. The map manager is something that I'm still working on. I did figure out a way to do maps similar to the way Silent Hill does their map system, but I haven't gotten 100% set up yet, so I have it inactive, and I'm not going to show it for right now until I fully figure that out, but it's basically running the same way as the other managers. You know, when you're doing a cutscene, you can't open the map manager, it will be set inactive and stuff like that. So I think that's about it. I just, like I said, it's not really a tutorial. I just wanted to show how I set this up, because some people ask kind of, you know, how do I set up? How do I make sure everything is the same in every scene? And how do I make some people even ask, you know, how do you make your background systems not ugly, so to where you just have like trees of all your character controls and everything. This is the nicest way that I've found to do this, playing around with this for, I think I've been making this game for 2 years now, maybe 3, I'm not sure exactly. And this is the nicest way that I've found to set this stuff up, and you can change it as needed, add stuff, delete stuff. Since this is all in a prefab, it'll save in every scene if you decide to update any of this. So it's just a nice way to set up a little the backend manager thing. Hopefully I didn't miss anything here. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll try and get back to you. I think that's about it. I'll probably make update videos for this as I add new things. Probably be more part of a devlog instead of a tutorial video, but it'll be interesting to see how this grows and changes over time if I find anything better. But hopefully it's helpful to some people for right now, and you can tweak it as needed. So thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful.